this is Flurry Moon. Welcome back to my channel. This video might be a little different from my usual stuff, but it's something I and many other people have noticed within the last few years. And I mentioned doing a video on this like really quick in my last video, and a few people pointed out that they would be interested in it, so we're doing it. The late 90s to mid 2000s were a lot of things, some great and some awful, but you can't say life was boring, at least visually. Specifically in the media, designs were jagged and funky, clothes and accessories were bold and bright, and video game graphics were clunky and far from perfected as technology was rapidly getting more advanced by the minute, but still not quite there. As the years went by and with technology seemingly at a peak, those rough, messy edges got smoothed out and traded in for a simpler but perfected aesthetic. And that goes for almost everything. Video game and cartoon art styles, clothing, hairstyles, the internet, and most visibly, department stores and fast food restaurants. This begs the question, just because we can upgrade, does that mean we should? Nothing is whimsical anymore, and I want to talk about it. Okay, so I am well aware that I'm about to sound really freaking annoying and whiny in this video, so I'm gonna try my best to not come across that way. The last thing I want to do is sit here and be one of those like old people who are like, kids these days and old is gold and new is ew. Do people say that? I don't know, but like a lot of people seem to think like everything was so much better when I was a kid, you know? And so I don't want to be that person, and so many things have gotten so much better. I think change and growth in any society is extremely needed, and I would hate if life was stagnant and never introducing new and fresh ideas. I am also in no way trying to glorify the 2000s without mentioning its deep flaws, especially in the media. The lack of racial diversity and terribly offensive and insensitive jokes that were in everything we consumed. The impossible to meet body standards and blatant fat shaming of specifically women, and also the malicious mocking of female celebrities who were clearly just struggling and going through it. I am so proud of how far we've come with stuff like that, so do not get me wrong, okay? And I'm not even necessarily saying we should return to the 2000s aesthetic, but what I do think needs to be brought back in a sense is the lack of aesthetic. And I know I sound like a crazy person right now, like what do you mean there was a clear aesthetic of the 2000s? But just hear me out. Corporate minimalism is pretty much exactly how it sounds. It refers to multiple things, one being that god-awful art style businesses love to use in PowerPoints and stuff for some reason, but overall it's used to describe businesses swapping out distinct, busy, and eye-catching methods with simplistic, straight-to-the-point advertisements and aesthetics. Minimalism is a standalone style in itself, and in some ways it's great. Promoting sustainability and anti-overconsumption is always a good thing, really driving home the point that we don't need all this stuff that we're always like influenced to buy on TikTok. You need this new... No, I don't. No, we don't. However, I just can't relate to this style personally as I'm a collector. Always have been, always will. I love knickknacks, I love toys. I love my room to be filled with my books, manga, albums, games, pink everything, plushies. Like that's just how I have always been. But I'm not saying there's necessarily anything wrong with minimalism, it's just a preference. But now that I feel like we have a feel for what corporate minimalism is, let's take a look at one of the biggest atrocities it has caused within the last few years. Let's start with the most basic example of corporate minimalism, feasting its grimy little paws into the joys of life. Founded in 1940 by the McDonald's brothers in California, but it wasn't until the 50s where we would see more of the iconic chain we know today. Specifically, the red and yellow color scheme with the iconic golden arches. McDonald's would, of course, evolve through the years, introducing Ronald McDonald in the 60s, the playground or the play place in the 70s, and continuing to keep this bright, childlike aesthetic with this crazy tree thing in the party room in the 80s, the funky character chairs and wall designs in the 90s, and what feels like the upgraded and ever so slightly toned down version of the previous years in the 2000s. Something that hadn't changed much in the last 30 years or so was the exterior. Arguably the most defining characteristic of the McDonald's architecture, I guess, since the 70s was the mansard roof. You may not know the name, which I certainly didn't, but you know exactly the style I'm referencing. The flat top with 4 slopes that almost looks like it's a little too big for the building itself, and of course the bright red and yellow that leaves you absolutely positive you are driving by a McDonald's. And that's something I can't help but respect about the old design. Red and yellow together, that is objectively ugly, but it's a risk, it pops, and it was done for a reason. Red grabs your attention and appetite, and yellow a color associated with joy and friendliness. This aesthetic was more than an aesthetic, it was carefully picked on purpose. The old McDonald's architecture disrupts the peace of whatever plaza or road or town you're driving past, okay? It's like you're driving by, oh, you see a TJ Maxx, you see a Walgreens, like, okay, the regular stuff. Oh my god, what is that? What is that? Oh, it's McDonald's. Do you want a 6-piece? It refused to blend in, which brings us to the current McDonald's exterior, clearly prioritizing other factors here. Starting with the actual architecture, the mansard roof is swapped out for more of a smooth, flat roof. Super boring, in my opinion, but that's okay. The building itself is pretty much like a box with glass windows. As for the colors, I've noticed with most current McDonald's, there is barely any red utilized in the building itself, and the only yellow is seen on the M. And we do see red and yellow, but it's mostly on like the signs like outside of the building, so I'm just talking about the building itself. Of course, there is nothing inherently wrong with this design style. I'm sure the designers and the people building it itself did a wonderful job, okay? The problem is, it's not McDonald's. I'm sorry, if I didn't know any better, I'd think this was like a bank. Now, there are probably many valid reasons as to why this is happening. It's very possible that creating a neutral building like this makes it so that if one McDonald's were to move or shut down, another business could slip right in without their building screaming, "We used to be a McDonald's," you know? So I totally understand this. However, there has to be another way of getting around this without stripping every last thing we have of its personality and quirks. I probably would have no argument here if this whole video was about one fast food chain, but it's in everything we consume. And there are reasons for this that we will be getting into later, but I'm going to break this up into sections, so let's start with department stores. What are we drinking today? I have a hot coffee. This is a salted caramel hot coffee black with 1 scoop of sugar. Something I respect a lot about the department stores in the late 90s to mid 2000s was that almost everything felt like they were spaces for children as well as adults. Malls had their funky food courts with that overcrowded yet oddly comforting feeling. They even still had stores like the Disney store, Limited Too, and although they haven't technically gone out of business, rainforest cafes all over the country had slowly started disappearing from local malls more than a decade ago. Everything that was whimsical and fun for kids to walk around and look at is either gone or has become a shell of its former self in order to conform to the corporate minimalism style. Build-A-Bear, with its famously warm orangey brown and blue color scheme, even mixing that warm coloring into its lighting, providing an inviting, childlike atmosphere, cut to the current model and it's just disappointing to look at. They kept the blue aspects but completely eliminated the warm browns and swapped them out for a white and beigey gray color scheme that feels cold and almost sterile. It's supposed to feel like a workshop, not a doctor's office. Like, get those cool toned overhead lights away from me. And I know I sound really nitpicky, like this is such a non-issue, but it's true that something as seemingly insignificant as the tone of the lighting completely changes the atmosphere. And designers know this. This is all things that they take into account. And I think designers are currently afraid to make anything look even remotely tacky or, God forbid, ugly, even just a little bit. But a space for children should be tacky. It shouldn't be something that an adult would necessarily gravitate towards. It's not for them. Speaking of something not for adults, Toys R Us. Now, if you're in Canada, this part might literally make no sense because you guys still have Toys R Us and I am forever jealous. Although there were little spots in random department stores that did feel like they catered to children, such as this cool gaming setup at Target, we still had one thing that was just ours: Toys R Us. So I'm not gonna pretend like we don't have toy stores anymore, because that's just a ridiculous claim, but nothing to the capacity of an entire department store chain just for kids and what kids liked. You didn't have to wait for your mom to stop looking at the clothes or the groceries or all the boring adult stuff. Because yes, of course, Target and Walmart, who are very much still in business, do have toy sections, but it's just not the same. Kids need spaces that are strictly for them, and the ones that are left are beginning to cater to adults' tastes. As for the current kids' toys themselves, I don't have much to complain about color-wise. Kids still have whimsical toys, maybe even a little too colorful, but there are parents I have seen on TikTok. I will never forget a TikTok I saw. It was around Christmas time, I think, of a mother. She painted her baby's toys beige to fit her aesthetic. Like, and you could tell the whole living room was like that millennial beige. Okay, so we're not gonna call out this mother too much in this video, because I just went to her TikTok, and the next year she re-spray painted it like bright pink sparkly colors and everything, so she kind of like has a sense of humor about it, and she knows, and like whatever. But turns out there's like a market on TikTok for mothers spray painting their children's toys beige. Like, this is not just like a one-time thing. This actually happens all the time. So let's make fun of these people because literally what? That is just insane. So I do respect current toy companies for continuing to make toys for kids. That's quite literally their job. We will get more into the millennial beige moms later. Anyway, it's not just the stores we walk into that have lost their charm. We will discuss social media later, boy will we, but let's just quickly go over the physical technology changes within the last 15 years, because everything looks so freaking boring now, okay? Phones used to be so fun. I was too young to have a cool flip phone like the older kids did. I did have a flip phone for like a hot second, and it was just so fun to flip, and now I have a flip phone actually. I have the Samsung Z Flip 3, and I love it. But phones used to be fun, specifically the variants of flip phones from the late 90s to the mid 2000s. Nowadays, you most likely have an iPhone or an Android, and if you have anything other than that, you're kind of seen as super quirky and different. But in the 2000s, it seemed like everyone you met had a different type of phone. One girl had a Razr, the other had a BlackBerry, another with a Nokia, T-Mobile Sidekick, and those were just the super popular ones. Even those big names had a ton of different variants and colors of their own. The days of everyone having a different phone are long gone, and it's such a silly thing to complain about, but it's still a little disappointing to think that even that little tiny bit of originality is long gone. At least with Samsung, there's a bit more personality with certain releases like the Z Flip series that I actually have and I love it, but every iPhone release is literally just a slightly bigger brick with an extra camera lens or whatever, and it leaves me wondering why they haven't started branching out into more fun, wacky ideas. Oh, I remember why. Nothing is whimsical anymore. We talked about Toys R Us, and I shared a few photos of game setups that used to be placed in all kinds of department stores. So what about the video games themselves? Have they succumbed to corporate minimalism? In some ways, absolutely. But it's a bit different than colors being toned down. In fact, some of the best games I've played within the last 5 years have amazing graphics and beautiful coloring. The graphics are absolutely not the issue here. The issue I have with newer games, especially installments or remakes of previously existing games, are the character redesigns. In some ways, it is awesome that we are able to see our favorite characters so clearly with such impressive and beautiful graphics. There's no doubt in my mind the people working on these games are some of the most talented people on Earth, okay? That is not the claim I'm making here. But with technology getting better and better, it does feel like we are losing some of the charm and the gravity of subtle subtle expressions in those old art styles. Something I mentioned recently was Club Penguin's redesign after Disney acquired it in 2007. Within the next few years, the art style that initially consisted of bold, harsh, and jagged lines were swapped out for a smoother, more commercial style. The online game still went strong for another few years or so, but fans quickly began yearning for the charming, messy-looking penguins they originally fell in love with. So I think the moral of that story is that technically better art isn't always best. Yes, Disney did a fantastic job upgrading the art style with more of a proper finish, but I really do feel like this rework was a part of the downfall of Club Penguin, even if it wasn't immediate. I'm gonna be referencing Harvest Moon for the next part, but you don't have to know anything about this game to understand what I'm saying here. Story of Seasons: A Wonderful Life was a remake of the 2003 GameCube entry Harvest Moon: A Wonderful Life. If you don't know, Harvest Moon and Story of Seasons is the same thing. There was just a name change in the mid-2010s. Obviously, 20 years later, changes will be made, and there were some great ones too. The graphics are beautiful, yet stay true to the original. You can now be gay, which is super cool, and character customization is always a plus for me. However, some of the original characters who are marriageable in the game did undergo a rework. In theory, this isn't a bad thing if it's done correctly. I think they did a wonderful job with Nami, keeping her original rough around the edges vibe, but switching up a few things like making her hair a bit spikier and less Karen-y, which I appreciate. Muffy's redesign is absolutely gorgeous, besides the fact that they renamed her Molly, but I can't really go in on them too much for this because I do believe these renames are actually closer to the original Japanese translation than the 2003 version, so whatever. And I get they're trying to modernize some of these characters, but why in doing so do they need to lose all quirkiness and personality? Specifically Gustafa and Marlin's redesigns. Gustafa in the original had a big pointy nose, a beard, and almost a witchy or wizardy-like hat. Now, because he's a dateable character, maybe they thought this wizard-like look wasn't attractive, which super boring, but whatever. Maybe they wanted to make him look more conventionally attractive and a wizard hat wasn't cutting it. So what do? They take away his pointy nose because big-nosed men don't deserve love, I guess. No more beard, straighter hair, and no more pointy hat. They male manipulatorified my big-nosed baddie, okay? This guy would ask me to name 5 songs, and then if I'm really going to eat all of that. Don't even get me started on Marlin. His original look with his curly black hair and sideburns becomes Matthew. That is every guy I went to high school with. That's just some dude. Who's Matthew? Where did his curly black hair go? Why did they lighten it? And here's the thing, I don't even have a right to be complaining about this because I never even played the original game, okay? Okay, I also just want to clarify because I feel like I can already hear all the comments. I don't even love their original designs. Like, I'm not emotionally attached to them like this at all. My point is that there were things that they didn't have to change like that, you know? What was the point of making Gustafa's nose not pointy anymore? You know what I mean? It's like stuff like that where I'm like, that was a defining characteristic in my eyes, and you just take it away for what? So that's what I'm trying to say here. I did, however, play Harvest Moon DS Cute, which did include all of these characters. I think this is maybe one of the hottest men I've ever seen. Is this a safe space? Am I allowed to say that? Okay, so really quick, this game hasn't even come out yet, but Harvest Moon Grand Bazaar is now being remade. And again, I had never even played this game, yet just looking at the before and after portraits specifically, I'm sure in-game, when the characters are actually moving, I'm sure they're gonna look amazing. And they do look amazing, I really do believe this. I really do think they got so caught up in making the characters look technically better, we lost these little aspects that show their character. Based off the portraits alone, Ivan, with a clenched fist, almost leaning away from us as if he's in the middle of turning to walk away, maybe even with a conflicted look on his face, to just standing there. It's giving Mom, I threw up. All those harsh lines were smoothed out, and he looks technically upgraded. But now he looks bland. Mind you, I never played this game. I don't know what these characters are like, but I can just tell from his first design what he's all about, and I can't tell who this guy is. I have no idea what he's thinking. Same with Lloyd. The original design once again looks as if he doesn't want to be talking to us at all. Slightly turned away, clenched fist, and even the facial expression, staring at us through his eyebrows, maybe even with great dislike or hatred. We see him now and he's just standing there. Doesn't look as standoffish as in the first photo. He even looks comfortable, body language wise. I'm a little biased because I just simply like the messier style better. I like when the art style looks like somebody drew it, you know? It is such a small thing to complain about, but we really are ignoring the gravity of subtle expressions and body language. Anyway, change is good, and obviously I would be naive to think they aren't going to redesign these characters from a decade ago. Considering how far technology has come, they should use it. But just because we can smooth out those imperfect edges, does that mean we should? I don't think so. But that's just my opinion, and this whole video is mostly just my opinion. The imperfections are the heart of all my favorite games. Sonic Adventure 2 on GameCube from 2001 is a mess to play in the year 2025, but the storyline, features, and charm of the game itself keeps me playing, despite its big flaws. I would rather play something that looks a little fucked up, but the content is fantastic, versus a game that visually looks incredible, but is simply a shell of what it used to be or what could have been. Great example, Animal Crossing New Horizons released in 2020. Don't start typing yet, okay? I love this game. It is the game that got me back into gaming as an adult. Flurry Moon as a YouTube channel simply would not exist without Animal Crossing New Horizons specifically, okay? But I would be dumb to think that the dialogue and content in general did not take a backseat to visuals. Genuinely one of the most beautiful games I've ever played, all while keeping the quirkiness of the iconic villager style, just upgraded. I actually have little to no notes about the art style here. I genuinely think they killed it. But all of the series' quirks were toned down, making it more commercial. Essentially, characters who had been in the series since the very beginning were savagely replaced with items. For instance, instead of Pete, Pelly, and Phyllis, who worked at the post office, they were replaced with the letter stand. 3 characters that had been present since the very beginning of the series were replaced with a piece of furniture. And a lot of people who had been there from the beginning were very disappointed in this, and I would have been too. Yes, technically it was now maybe easier and quicker to send a letter because you don't have to speak to anyone, but this is Animal Crossing. There are no deadlines. It is extremely slow paced. I have time. Like, why are we trying to make things more efficient by getting rid of iconic, needed characters in the series? Not to mention your animal neighbors literally getting lobotomized since the last entry in, what, 2014? In the old games, your villagers took a bit to warm up to you and were often rude or would throw backhanded jabs your way. They were sassy but lovable, and that made it that much more rewarding when they finally got around to liking you enough to give you their framed photo, because that's what you do when you like someone in this universe, I guess. But in New Horizons, the villagers are immediately super accepting of you and overly positive about everything. Yes, they're adorable, but where's the personality, the charm, the quirkiness, the whimsy? It's almost like nothing is whimsical anymore. Even consoles are looking a bit too sleek for me right now. We had an Xbox 360 back in the day that was that kind of like see-through green vibe. I'm gonna put a picture here. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about. I had my pink Game Boy and DS Lite with stickers all over them. Now consoles are just like a block. No silliness. Why is everything so sleek? And this has been going on for a long time. I'm not gonna pretend like the Wii is the most amazing looking console design on earth. So this all has me thinking, why are we afraid to be ugly? Why are we afraid of our stores, restaurants, clothes, houses, and interior designs being even remotely tacky? Would you guys hate me if I said social media? It always comes back to that. And I hate talking about social media because it feels so overdone, like the most boring take ever. The internet and social media used to be fun. In the days of MySpace and other more obscure social media sites like Pixo. Does anyone remember Pixo? That was my shit. Fun fact, I think Pixo was the first time I ever saw that emo SpongeBob edit, and it was like opening a portal. But on sites like these, you could design your page, your favorite songs, like music. Music would play when you would go onto these pages. It was all very customizable, and cut to Instagram now, and it's just like, here's my pictures. Even in the early 2010s, everyone, including A-list celebrities, were tweeting out silly statements or just describing what they were doing at that very moment. Kim K in 2010, for example. I hate air conditioning. It always gives me a cold. My foot fell asleep. Ate a bite of a salad and an olive was in it. I liked it but scares me because I hate olives. Hope my taste isn't changing. I don't want to like olives. It wasn't just Twitter either. This random mirror selfie of Ariana Grande in a bathroom with terrible lighting with the caption, outfit today, smiley face, bow emoji, or Drake with just seen Cars 2. Out of this world. Not saying these posts were revolutionary, but that's the point. It felt like just one big group chat, and celebrities didn't post any differently than your friends. Now anything Kim K tweets is either a carefully posed and edited photo taken of her or an ad for Skims. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing, especially considering Kim Kardashian is a 44-year-old woman with children and an obviously successful business. So why would she post about not liking olives or that her foot fell asleep? I'm not trying to say this era of social media was superior in any kind of way, but there's something to say about the way social media has become a pissing contest in who has the cooler and more aesthetically pleasing life. Our pages have become, this is what I want people to think my life actually looks like, as opposed to the 2000s and 2010s when we were posting exactly what our lives looked like in the most mundane moments. Another aspect of social media that has made us afraid to not look perfect at all moments of life is the rise of glow-ups. Less currently, but in the last, say, decade of social media, we had this weird fascination with glowing up. Around 2013 to 2014, when Instagram was on the rise, something clicked where we realized we could get a lot of attention and compliments for posting an old, ugly photo of ourselves versus what we look like now, which is way hotter. Not because I was 11 in the first photo and now I'm 16 in the second one. Anyway, I don't know if you guys remember, but there were always those Instagram memes that were basically just screenshots of tweets. It was always with the caption, "Be careful who you call ugly in middle school," or "Be nice to everyone in high school," with a before and after photo of someone who got better looking. This, if you don't know, was implying that the nerd you called ugly in middle school could get hotter one day, and therefore worthy of love, respect, and compassion. So be careful, you may regret it. Be nice to everyone, because they could get hot one day. I always remember thinking these posts were really weird. Oh. Why are you here? Louis just walked in and actually scared the shit out of me. I thought it was just a man, because he's not supposed to be home, so I just... Okay, where was I? I remember thinking these posts were weird even at the time, thinking, why can't we just be nice to people with nothing in return? So I guess I'm just like way smarter and nicer than most people. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, this was seemingly the beginning of this glow up trend, then continuing on Musically with the, what was it? The Don't Judge challenge, where basically everyone would like put on glasses because glasses are ugly, and like fake acne because acne is ugly, and then like cover the camera and then they would uncover it and they'd be hot. I don't know. Now with TikTok, there's always a trend that's just an excuse to show how ugly and worthless you were before. But don't worry, now I'm hot. I know this seems like a tangent, and it kind of is, but I can't help but feel like this obsession with proving that you're at your best now is leading everyone to try to convince themselves and their audiences that they are currently at their peak, which means every photo is carefully crafted with the perfect lighting, angles, and in some cases, photo Photoshop and editing. Nobody wants to be the before picture, they want to be the after. But what we don't realize is we need to start somewhere. You can't glow up if you've looked perfect since you were 12 because you've been consuming glow up content since you were 6. To bring this back to corporate minimalism, thank you, which I promise is the point of this tangent, everyone is afraid to not be aesthetically pleasing at all times because our obsession with the after photo. So 10-year-olds aren't running around with cartoons on their shirts and carrying silly lunchboxes. They want to be like the girls they see on TikTok who are obsessed with their lives looking as aesthetically pleasing and clean girlified as possible. This is why we have 10-year-olds in slick back buns with hoop earrings and doing skincare. They don't want to be like Hannah Montana or iCarly anymore. They want to be like Alex Earl. Do the kids still like her? I don't know. Returning back to the sad beige babies from before, another aspect we are completely overlooking is the millennial beige mom aesthetic. Listen, I know I have a lot of millennials watching, okay? We as Gen Z like to make fun of you sometimes, just like how a little kid makes fun of their older sibling. But the same millennials we're making fun of on TikTok were the cool older siblings who everyone wanted to be. However, maybe because millennials grew up with all this funky and quirky whimsical stuff in the media, I wonder if they reject it now, which is why so many millennial parents design their interior, clothing, hair colors, and their children's lives with this muted, plain, minimalist beige aesthetic. Which, hey, that's your style. But then I see these family photos of all the children in like beige, and I'm like, what is going on? Don't children like need color? Isn't that like a thing? Isn't that a big part of their development? And I know this begs the question, how much color? Because then you're entering overstimulation territory like frickin' Cocomelon, and we know that's not good for kids. But maybe, just maybe, don't paint your children's toys so they look better to you. Okay, I know I've talked about a lot of stuff today, and to sum this up, this is simply the style of the current generation that will change in the next decade. It's just something that a lot of people, me included, have noticed over the last few years, and it's really not all that serious. I hope this didn't come across as too whiny, but I'm sure it did, because I'm a whiny little bitch. Okay, so that's about it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment below how you feel about all this. I'm dying to know. I'm sure I'm gonna get a lot of people. I don't know, I just have a feeling people might not like this video, but I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Bye!